Welcome to Ether United Interviews. Here we will be talking to different people about current questions you or our viewers are wondering about. There will be interviews with people within the blockchain as well as various esports. My name is Izzy and I will be your host, and today we are speaking with Ethan, as known as Eri on Twitch. He's a veteran League of Legends player and streamer and mains in the role of AD carry. We called him in today to ask about his opinion on the new champion support/marksman duo, Rakan and Xayah. But beforehand, let's get to know a little more about Ethan. Okay, hey!
Hi.
How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm glad to actually catch you.
Yeah, except you can't see my face, but that's all good.
Right. Yeah. Except for I got to talk to, my screen the whole time. But it's not any different than my normal streaming. So.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, cool. So I've got a whole lot of set questions for you, which is very exciting. So my first question for you was, when did you first start playing League of Legends? Like, which season did you start in?
Ooh, I started playing. This is my reference that I give everybody. I started playing when Aurelia was launched.
Right.
Which was
cool.
Season 2 back in like 2013, I believe, ish.
Yeah.
Or even earlier than that, actually.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm fairly certain it's back earlier than even that.
Right, awesome. So you've been playing for a while.
Yeah, quite a while. 2010, actually, is when she was released.
Wow. Okay, that is quite a while. It's weird to think that that's such a long time ago now when,
Right.
Like, how are we already in 2017? Anyway, I'll go totally off topic. So what is your current rank in League of Legends?
Currently, I am Gold 3, pushing for Gold 2. I took a bit of a hiatus for work.
Nice.
But I'm normally a plat player. I normally
Right.
float in the plat range every season.
Cool. Awesome. So when did you start streaming video games on Twitch, such as League? Like, was it the first game you started playing?
No, actually. It was my stream was actually far from League.
Right.
Initially, I started streaming back in 2013.
Wow.
I do it as a hobby, primarily because I had friends that wanted to see what I was doing while I was playing, because we'd be in voice comms and I would get really excited or emotional, or I would just start losing my mind, and they're just like, we can't see what's going on. So they asked me to figure out how to stream, so I kind of set up my own little thing. I really enjoy it. I don't get to do it as often as I'd like to, so it is pretty sporadic at best, although I've been trying to clear that up some. But actually, I started as a variety streamer.
Cool.
And then I played League on the side.
Yeah.
So
that's such an awesome reason to start streaming, because a lot of people, I think, go into it kind of like, I'm going to build this big following, but you just started it because your friends wanted to see you make awesome plays.
Right. And I think anybody that starts streaming hoping to go famous are typically the ones that they don't get anywhere, and they don't last long because they don't enjoy it. They're trying to use it for a reason, and that's not how it works.
Yeah.
So
yeah, absolutely. Cool. My next question is, why did you decide to main AD carry instead of any other roles?
Because most AD carries are bad. No, I'm just kidding. So I started looking towards AD carry because I found that when it came down to it, the most important role, in my opinion, is AD carry.
Right.
Simply because the game is won or lost not by kills, not by Baron or Dragon, although all of those things help, but you have to be able to destroy the Nexus, and the best person to do that is the AD carry. Initially, I was a mid lane main, and while I was in mid lane, no matter how my lane went or no matter which lane I rotated to, if the AD carry was struggling in any form or fashion, the game became insurmountably harder. So because of that, I figured if I couldn't rely on the random people that would join my matches to do that position well, I should try to see if I could take that role over, just to kind of guarantee that safety, so that if it goes poorly at that point, it's my fault instead of somebody else's.
Yeah, so. You don't want to be blaming, you want to be the reason why.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, I totally get that. Cool. So, what are your current favorite AD carries?
My current favorite, I am definitely one of the players that likes to abuse the meta. So Lucian is my hands down first pick if I can get a hold of him.
Yeah.
He's very fast, very bursty, very fun play style. Um, Beyond that, I like Vayne. She's always been a go-to for me.
Yeah.
I got a few of the people that'll stop by the channel. They just ask me to play Vayne because they get a kick out of me picking fights with everybody.
Being that
And
lane
then
bully.
Jin. Oh, absolutely. And then Jin would be the last one. Although right now he's not really favorable, but I absolutely adore his play style. It's very methodical. It's very precise. It has a large amount of damage once you start getting rolling. But you really have to kind of plan out your fights ahead of time. You can't just like right click and lift your hand and pray that everything works out. Like you really need to do a little bit of forethought and setup to be able to get him to really show his potential. So
yeah, absolutely. So are there any like particular cons or how would you say like difficulties that you're currently experiencing with some of your favorite AD carries?
For Vayne's always weak early. She relies very heavily on the mid to late game to be able to really shine and do her work. So you always struggle early. Lucian is just an all-around bully right now, so no one really with him.
Yeah.
That's like I said, if you follow the meta and you really keep an eye on how that all functions, you can pick up the powerhouses, and then you really don't have a lot of struggle. Jin, I avoid entirely.
Right.
As much as I love his play style, he's far too weak and far too slow, and he just kind of becomes fodder. So you don't pick him and have a good time anymore.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, cool. We'll do our best to explain what Rakan and Xayah abilities do, but in the case that you guys, the viewers, are still confused, all of the information is down below in the description for you guys to go and read about. So how do you currently feel about Riot's decision to create a champion duo instead of, releasing them independently?
I actually really like it.
Right.
I think it's adorable. First off, the fact
It's
that
pretty adorable.
they made a duo bot lane that's like a dedicated duo, because you've got a few of them that kind of synergize well. That might talk a little bit. They've added those interactions, but they've never released an actual couple like that before. So I rather like it.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Let me quickly read again. Okay, so how are you kind of specifically about their abilities? How do you kind of feeling about Rakan's passive?
For Rakan, I'm curious how he's gonna. So a lot of times I like to see in game how he starts to really affect, because it's hard to read the numbers or to see like the little previews and really get a gauge on it. I got to play with him a little bit in the PBE, and his shield feels fairly simple, fairly basic. There's not a lot to it. It's kind of like using the Keystone Masteries. It's very similar in that aspect. But because of how mobile he is and the fact that he plays almost like a crossbreed between like an Ari and more like a less damage, very mobile Ari. His kit kind of needs a shield that comes in for him, so I can see where the concept was.
Yeah. Do you have any particular opinions on any of his abilities that have really stood out to you?
Not necessarily. When it comes to his W is probably my favorite one, but I don't really know how well it's gonna pan out, I guess. Simply because with how mobile he is, trying to apply that big AoE knockup If used correctly, will be fantastic. It'll set up a lot of champions. It'll be very valuable to a lot of people. But much like anything, if people are keeping an eye on him and they're not letting him really set up and get his moves going, then he's going to be risking himself pretty hard for very little payout. So
Yeah.
it'll be fun to see how people work it into their kits.
Yeah, absolutely. I was going to ask, what do you believe is Rakan's, what do you think is the best part of his kit for laning phase?
For laning phase? Honestly, I think it's the amount of trades that he can do.
Right.
So with his Q's on a relatively low cooldown, and I pulled up his abilities because I wasn't going to remember the names of them.
So okay, I never remember the names.
The Gleaming Quill is on a fairly low cooldown, at least enough to be able to really kind of poke out and do his damage. And with that reoccurring shield that he has, it kind of gives him a chance to get in, kind of poke and harass, bounce back out, especially because he's applying the shields and everything as he moves around. He's got a very fast-paced style of play. So even in the early levels, he'll have a good bit of damage output that he can lay down, plus all the healings that he applies from his Q.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting for him to battle it. I think the only things he's really gonna have to worry about are people that can re-engage. So he doesn't want to like dash in or poke it at like a blitzcrank.
Yeah.
Because if he gets snagged up, he's gonna be pressing W and praying that he can get back out.
Yeah, absolutely. So what are you seeing as kind of his pros of his kit in team fights?
Depending on his tankiness, I think is going to be the hardest part for him. So with a team fight, as he applies his damage and as he applies his CC, a lot of it pans off of the idea that he's going to be very mobile and be able to get in and out of a fight. His ulti in particular, the fact that he has that quick charm as he dashes around touching everybody, if he can't take a hit, he can't produce that kind of CC whatsoever. So in an engage comp where somebody's going in with him, if he's following suit, he's providing the shield as he's going with that ally, and then providing the charms in a more like centralized, smaller location. I think he could apply a huge amount of CC as well as support for his team in a team fight. Whereas if the enemy team were to spread out, or if his shield and his stats don't really permit him to get too heavy, I think he's going to really struggle. So
right, yeah. Are you seeing any main combos that you think are going to be really popular with Rakan?
I mean, Rakan and Xayah are going to be
together pretty damn
every game for like the next 2 weeks. You know, after launch, it's beyond that though. I see him favoring, like I said, engage comps. So anything like Vi, Amumu, for the junglers, people that are going to go in. Same thing, for like the top laners, anybody that wants to pick a fight, he's going to be a big favor for. Whereas any kind of poke comps or anything are not going to like him, and he's not going to like them either, because he's not going to have a way of getting in.
Yeah, cool. Okay, so moving on to Xayah. How do you feel about her passive?
I like it. I like it a lot. It feels very smooth. It's very quick to play. And like I said, I got to play around a little bit. And as an AD carry main, I focused more on her than I did on Rakan. But her play style has a lot of harass in lane. It's insane the amount of damage you can output, as long as you kind of balance out where you're putting all the feathers. So I rather enjoyed it. I like their kit. Yeah.
How do you feel about her abilities?
It feels like an AD carry talent. It's very unique. It's a lot of fun. It really makes you have to kind of pay attention to the micromanagement of the game. Having the feathers placed in a poor position or not adjusting to keep them stay behind your enemy will reduce your damage output significantly. So it's very important to kind of pay attention to where you're standing and how you're fighting, because you might turn the entire fight around if you get, 8, 9, 10 feathers sitting on the field. And then you can get the enemy to kind of line up for them. And so when you pull them all back with E, it just shreds them.
Yeah. Seems a bit OP.
It does. But it's going to be very, very skill-based, I think, is the best way to put it. It's going to be important for not only the player using her, but the enemy that's facing her to really pay attention to where everything's at.
Yeah. Cool. Okay, again, what do you feel will be the best part of Xayah's kit in the laning phase?
I'd say, well, really her passive, honestly.
Right.
The Q will be a nice, consistent poke, but it's really going to be her passive that applies the majority of the damage, just simply because it cuts through everything. It also shoves the lane pretty hard. So if you're trying to apply that pressure to give a rotation in or to set up for anything, it'll really set everybody up properly. So
yeah. Okay. In team fights, how are you seeing her kit kind of performing?
If she can stay out and in the back line avoid the initial engage, much like a Twitch or a lot of the shorter range AD carries, if you can avoid that initial start to the fight, I think she'll do fantastic. Her kit doesn't really promote being engaged upon. She can lay down a lot of feathers very quickly to try and help her, but it's simply a see who bursts first kind of thing.
Yeah.
She'll be very team reliant on trying to stay alive, but if you can keep her up, I feel like she can absolutely shred a team fight.
Right. Yeah. So are you seeing any combos coming to be arising within her kit?
I would see alongside Rakan, I would see champions that enable her to kind of get in and out of the fight. So I could see a TK being very handy for her. Instead of having her face tank anything, he could always scoop her up and take care of the problem.
Yeah.
I see poke lanes would be especially viable, especially like Xayah.
Yeah.
She would be fantastic as a lane support to go right alongside her because of just how much she could apply. Whereas I think supports that are more passive won't do here nearly as much favor, just simply because it's going to rely very heavily on her to try and perform, and she doesn't have a lot of mobility associated with her kit.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, awesome. How do you feel about the empowered recall?
It's adorable.
The dance when they come together.
Yeah, it's really cute. It's it makes me raise the question of who else do they plan on kind of synergizing? Are they going to enable any of the older champions to have that kind of synergy with somebody? For example, like Garen and Lux have their their connection. So are they going to gain something like that, or is it going to be specific only to these two?
Right.
I'm curious where Riot's going with this now that they've started implementing a duo that's a designed duo.
Yeah, totally. Okay, do you have any other thoughts on how this duo will change the meta and the power ranking of the AD carries?
It's going to make the game much faster. I'm also curious in terms of how they're going to implement, because right now the two of them together actually gain additional stats. They gain a better performance when they're around each other, and I'm curious if they're going to, much like I said with the empowered recalls, if they're going to have that same kind of interaction with other champions, because that'll be a natural debuff to the champion if it's played without its duo. And especially in high elo play, that'll be something to consider, because if you pick the AD carry early and they see this, they can take the support away and basically negate both sides. Whereas if you give the duo to one side or the other, they gain those extra stats, those extra bonuses. So
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for speaking with me today. I learned a lot, being an unranked player myself.
Oh, no worries, no worries. I get in the habit of kind of coaching through, my different games, or I have people that stop by and ask all the time. So I'm
Oh my
more than
God.
willing to dish out as much info as I can find. So
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's awesome. Thank you so much. It was awesome meeting
absolutely.
you. Cool.
Nice to meet you.
Well, that brings us to the end of the video. Thank you so much for being here. If you guys want to check out Ethan's stream, all of the links will be in the description below. Also, make sure to check out all of our social media online. That will also be in the description. Thank you so much for being here, and I'll see you next time.